Today, I'm going to talk about my two-in-one life. So, all my life, I've sort of juggled literally two professions, the world of music and the world of advertising and branding. And before we come to where I am today, let's start with a little bit of history. So I was born and brought up in Bangalore, and I was brought up in a home where my dad was from the royal family of Kerala, and my mum was the Bharatanatyam dancer. Dad was an amateur theatre actor and was very fascinated by the classical art form of Kerala, which is Kathakali. And my mum, of course, being a Bharatanatyam dancer, she gave up professional dancing after she got married, but she used to regale us with stories and do a little dancing in our living room, etc., etc. So there was also always music at home. So there was Carnatic classical music, there was the pop of the time, Beatles, etc. There was even some jazz, which is Louis Armstrong, Frank Sinatra. So it was quite an eclectic mix. But the family was really crazy about one thing. It was cricket. My elder brother played for universities in Bangalore University. My younger brother played Ranji for Karnataka and actually was in the same team as Rahul Dravid, Anil Kumble, Srinath, etc. They're still buddies till today. He's in Australia now, he's in Perth. So I was also a decent cricketer. In school, I was considered sort of slotted for the state schools, good enough for state schools, and I was an opening batsman. Entered college, St. Joseph's College, Bangalore, and my first year, in those days they used to call it PUC, which is the 11th standard or the first year of pre-university. And I was in the senior team. That was a fantastic achievement because the senior team had Ranji players already playing in it. And I was opening bat there. When one day I was standing in the slips and I dived to take a catch and I felt this terrible pain in my back. So I went to the doc and the doc said, "Bad news, you got to stop playing cricket for 2 to 3 years. I said, "What are you talking about? Like, this was my dream, right?" My name was actually called out in the state school selections. And he says, "No, you got it." So I was 17 years old, at the peak of my, starting of my abilities as a cricketer, really. And I had to stop playing. So I used to go to college, and I had a little mouth organ that I used to take. So, I had various quotas. I had a sports quota, I had a cultural quota. So I didn't have to, I had some time off from the attending classes. So I used to go to college and just play a little mouth organ. And this guy comes up to me, his name is Roshan Samtani, dear friend even today. He's a professor of ethno music in Spain currently. And he came up to me and he said, "Hey man, you play the mouth harp? Let's jam." So, the only songs I knew were some Hindi Bollywood songs and maybe a few pop songs like "Sunday Morning, Up with the Lark," songs like that. And so I had this little mouth organ. And Roshan actually taught me what is called the blues. And the blues has a sort of structure, and it typically uses this kind of harp. So So that's the blues harp. As we went on in our musical journey, the harp became a little limiting, because you can see it's got a limited number of course the real masters can play on any harp and play any kind of music, but for me I was limited. So Roshan actually came up and said, hey man, I've got this 2 rupee bamboo flute in my house, so why don't we try and use this? And I always say the flute found me, because in my wildest dreams, there was no real musician in our family. And my wildest dreams, I never thought I'd be a flute player. So then I started, trying to get a sound out, which itself is difficult on a flute. Okay, so there began the journey with the bamboo flute. I studied Carnatic for a couple of years, but then quickly realized that if I wanted to play in the Western idiom, in the jazz idiom, it was a little difficult. You would need many flutes to play all the different keys that are expected in Western music. So I moved on. Of course, this is not the same flute. At that time, I could afford only a cheap Chinese flute, which very, very soon broke down. But now I can afford a more expensive flute, and this is a Japanese flute, very highly handcrafted. This is 14 karat gold, lip plate. This is sterling silver. The entire flute costs many, many lakhs. I've saved a lot to be able to afford and buy this flute. So in those days, there was nobody to teach this kind of flute. This is called a Western concert flute. And so I began the journey of discovery by, those days, cassettes. You just put a cassette, you'd listen, and so by year, I started picking up stuff. And I came across this incredible band called Jethro Tull. I don't know how many of you all have heard it, but it's a rock band. And the lead singer, Ian Anderson, also plays incredible flute. And he's got certain techniques which I just listened to and picked up. So he hums, he growls, he spits into the flute, almost like modern beatboxers. And that's become part of my sound now. And I was listening to a particular song of his, an interpretation of Johann Sebastian Bach's Bourrée. And he plays it incredibly. So I'll play a little bit of that. But these are some of the techniques he uses. Okay, so that's Bourrée, and that was the beginning of my journey, really. And now I come to the big dilemma. I finished college, and y'all will all face this. Though y'all are more specialized, I was just doing a basic arts degree. And so do I take music or do I get a job? Like, this was the big dilemma. And music was in me. I mean, I used to, even during college days, I used to practice 8 hours a day. I was so obsessed with my flute. Now, how do I get into a 9-to-5 job and not play the flute? But, you know, I was playing jazz and blues. There's no money in it. Like if you are in Bollywood, you can make lots of money as a musician. But so there was a choice, right? Mind versus heart, passion versus profession. And I chose that I'm going to do both because I cannot leave music. It's impossible. I tried for 6 months not to play with a band or not to. It was impossible. It was like not breathing for me. So I decided to do both, which is really not black, not white, the gray area, right? Okay, so, well, this had its consequences because I worked 25, 30 years in advertising, and I always joke and say I used to work by day and play by night. So I used to go for my performances in the night after work and rehearsals after work, and sometimes get back to work after rehearsals because I hadn't finished my deadlines. So that is the way it was, and that was the 2-in-1 life that I lived for all my years in advertising. Okay, now I'm still in Bates, and you've heard of mergers, right? So Bates merges, or David merges into Bates, and Enterprise, which was Mohammed Khan's famous agency, merges into Bates. And now I am the executive creative director of all the 3 entities. And we get a fantastic brief from Virgin Mobile. And the brief was, we are entering India and we have to target youngsters such as y'all, right? So there's a great Indian insight we had that Indian youngsters don't confront their parents directly, right? So you find patli galis to sort of do your thing. So that was the insight based on which we had created a whole series of ads, very popular, called Think Hatke. Okay? Virgin Mobile, Think Hatke. And in this was a germ that actually leads me to where I am today. If you hear the end, there is a little musical signature, which today I call a MOGO, or musical logo. It's a term I've created. You can have a listen to that.
मॉम डैड आपसे कुछ कहना है.
बोलो.
मुझे लड़कों में कोई इंटरेस्ट नहीं है. मतलब
इस सब तुम्हारी वजह से.
मेरी गर्ल्स स्कूल का आइडिया किसका था?
हाँ, पर बिल्डिंग के लड़कों से तो मिक्स होने देती है.
हेलो टेन सिंह, मैं नहीं आ सकती. आई कॉल यू लेटर.
बेटा कौन था?
कोई नहीं डैड, एमबीए क्लास का लड़का टेन सिंह गोवा जाने का प्लान बना रहा था. नॉट इंटरेस्टेड.
इंटरेस्ट लेना चाहिए. को करिकुलर एक्टिविटीज.
टेन सिंह
लड़का है, अच्छा ही होगा. जब लाइफ दिलाए झटके, सोच जरा हटके. वर्जिन मोबाइल.
So there's a whole series there, right? And at the end you have tan 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 tanga du dung chak. That became the sonic signature. Okay, so moving on. Now I've almost come to the end of my advertising career. I'm at Mudra, which has now become DDB, been bought over by DDB, which is a global American fantastic agency, who were very famous for their Volkswagen campaign way back in the 60s. And life really came full circle because I was working on Volkswagen. And one of the first big launches we had was the launch of Vento, which I think has just been discontinued, very popular Volkswagen car. And we were thinking of a way to really make an impact in the Indian market. Again, audio had a way to play with that. I came up with this idea because of the greeting card. You guys have seen this greeting card where you open it and it starts singing happy birthday, right? So we said, why can't a newspaper sing? Or why can't a newspaper talk, right? And we actually researched it, we presented it to the client, and it came out, and this was the very famous talking newspaper ad for Volkswagen Vento. I mean, there were stories of people opening the newspaper in aeroplanes and just jumping out of their seats because the newspaper started talking. It was a photosensitive chip that was inserted. imagine lakhs on lakhs of Times of India newspapers all across India had physically the chip inserted. So you can imagine the kind of work that happened and the kind of money Volkswagen spent for one day of this ad. So, well, while I'm here, I launched my band, which is the Indo-Jazz Fusion band. It's called the Rajeev Raja Combine. Do check it out on Spotify. I'm working on my new album. And here goes. This is Rajeev Raja. We've got a great lineup of songs today and even better lineup of musicians. Just to give you an idea of the sound, it's an organic Indo-Jazz fusion sound, all original compositions. And when it was launched, within 2 weeks of launch, we hit #1 on Apple Music India. And we couldn't believe it. If you look at the #2 and the others, in legends such as Armstrong, I mean, just to be in that same list is like very humbling, great experience. So, yeah, so, you can see how music has followed me and, how branding and music sort of went together. And Mark Twain says this famous thing, the two most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you discover why. And, right? So it took me a while to discover why, around 50 years, right? But I discovered my why. And that's really where my passion now meets my profession. And I launched brand music 10 to 12 years ago. What brand music does is we create the sonic identity of a brand. And just as every brand has a logo, we create a mogo or musical logo, right? But there is a lot of science that goes into it. Indian raga system is very, very fantastic, and it's been there for thousands of years. It's very scientific. I use different ragas and I can put you into different emotions, right? We all know this, the Indian classical musicians know it. And we said, look, we need to start from there. We are not just about creating jingles. We are about creating brand relevant sound which will evoke a certain kind of emotional response that the brand wants to be evoked, right? So there's a lot of work in that. So let's have a little like sonic experience, yeah? What I'm going to do, just to demonstrate the science of sound and the art of music, let me play a short piece on my flute for y'all. I invite y'all to close your eyes and just go where the music takes you. You'll probably see some imagery, you may feel some emotions, it may trigger some memories. We'll come back and have a chat about what you saw and felt. I hope you all haven't gone to sleep. You can open your eyes. Okay. You can clap if you want. Okay. Let's just have random. You heard this piece of music. Any imagery that came into your mind, any emotion, just one word. Yeah? Sorry? Morning, early morning, sunrise. Yeah. Sleep. Okay. Peace. Nature. Anybody else? Sorry? Krishna. Okay, lovely. Now look at it. Look at the amazing, responses. I'm sure you also much more than that. Imagery, you would have felt emotions, you would have felt a sense of calm, sense of peace. Now there's a reason you're feeling all this. It's not by accident, it's by design. So this particular rag or scale, this rag is called Hamsadvani, and it's a very, very famous South Indian rag. It is normally used in the morning, and it evokes the morning. It is most famously used as an invocation for Lord Ganesha. And in the south, there's a very famous composition called Vatapi Ganapatim, which is constructed out of this scale. Now, why is this scale, wherever I've played this in the world, not just in India, everybody's got similar imagery. Morning, sunrise, river, nature, greenery, mountains, etc. Now, this particular scale in the Western system is called a pentatonic scale. It uses only 5 notes. And that's why it's such a beautiful, melodious scale. It uses only these 5 notes. That's it. And this is a composition of mine called Peace. Right? So, it's guaranteed that anybody who hears this rag cannot see night. It's impossible. You will see day, you'll probably see closer to morning sunrise. Now let me change that, okay? I'll take the first 3 notes of the scale and I'll change only the 3rd note. The first 2 notes remaining the same. So the original 3 notes. Now only the 3rd note changes. You feel sad? Yeah. So 1 note change and you've changed from, right? So you've changed from morning, from sunrise to sunset, right? It's just amazing. So we built our company based on these principles of understanding the science of sound and understanding the personality of brands. So every brand is like a human being. Coke is different from Pepsi, right? Volkswagen is different from, say, Mercedes-Benz. They all have different personalities, and once we identify those personalities, we are able to create a sound which is unique to that personality. Do you want your brand to be happy? Do you want your brand to be, if you're a motorcycle brand, maybe you want it to be exhilarating? If you're a caring brand like J&J Baby, maybe you want it to be very sentimental and mother's love coming through. How do you communicate this through different fields of sound? And that's really what our journey has been at Brand Music. 10 years and counting. Thank you. So our first big break was Vistara. And when you board Vistara, you'll hear our sound on board. The second big break was HDFC Bank, and every ATM in the country, when you put your debit card in, you will hear our Mogo or musical logo. And when you finish your transaction, you will hear our Mogo again. So it's not just about branding recognition, it's also about utility for the customer, because it's safe to leave the ATM. The biggest fear we have at an ATM is there's somebody standing behind you, is it safe to leave? The Mogo signals, an audio signal that it's safe to leave, but it's coming from the brand. Right? So the third big one which took us global was the sound for MasterCard globally. You're not yet hearing it in India, but it's playing in about 190 countries across the world. This was all based on our research of sound, and we created the sound of MasterCard, which essentially is a very magical sound. It's about priceless moments. So here's a snapshot or audio shot of some of the key work we've done in the past 10 years. Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. So, life has come a full circle, where once the world of music and the world of brands and advertising was separate for me, it's all come together now, and that's what brand music does. So what are my learnings? Mind and heart can coexist. Passion and profession can coexist. It's all about just finding it, and it doesn't matter if you're in pharma or chemical engineering, you can do that, but you can also follow your passion and your heart. You can always find time for it. And it will help you immeasurably in either field, because you will bring something from the knowledge of another field into your existing field, and from your existing field you will be able to transfer knowledge into your passion field, right? You may not be working together like I am doing with brand music, but you can still do it separately, and it'll help you a lot. Two lives can benefit from each other and become one. You two can live a two-in-one life. Thank you.